And so I'm in the information field of all potential and all creativity. And so the downloads is my mind's opening up into what is in the field that I'm looking to pull and cognize out of the field. And
The Art of Rising. Conversations with leaders, warriors, and thinkers who live with intention. Less noise, more clarity. Let's rise. Greetings and welcome to the Art of Rising, where we are exploring transformation, leadership, and conscious visionaries changing the planet. I have the proud honor to be with an amazing person. I mean, his bio is quite diverse and he's been through it. So this is going to be a real barn burner right here. So let's just get into it. Brother, welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself. Let us know where you're living and stuff like that.
it's great to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me along. I'm looking forward to having this conversation. My name is Tom. I'm based in Sydney, Australia. And, I've been a meditation teacher, a retreat host, speaker, coach for a few years now. But prior to that, I was in finance as a broker, which I'm sure we'll probably end up sharing that story through the session.
For sure. I seen some of your background. I was like, wow, man, how does he go from over here to over there? And then, you spoke a bit about burning out and those things. So perhaps we could just get right in it, man. Maybe you could tell us something like, what is the inner thing that has to change, the inner pattern? What does that have to change before, all of the finance change and your situation change and your lifestyle changes?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was in finance, I started very young. I was 19 years old. It was the same year as Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street. He started his career at the age of 22 in 1987, and I started in 1987 at 19. It was a massive trading room floor. And, that industry, it was fast, it was furious, it was chaotic, it was pandemonium, and there was a lot of hedonism. And, before long, I was swept into that culture, and you're doing a lot of drugs and drinking and partying and up late. And just before the call, we're talking about your energy, and that's something you've worked out. You're doing your stretches, you're journaling, and for me, my energy was it was dark, it was stressed, it was overwhelmed, and I was depleted, and I was craving, which led to addictions. And so my inner world was influencing my outer world, my actions, and the spaces that I was occupying. And this eventually led to, over time, a full-blown nervous breakdown. I was getting anxiety, panic attacks, depression, a lot of dark self-loathing, guilt, shame because of all the things that I was doing, the lifestyle, the patterns. And in this darkness, I had to find a way out of that. And so eventually I learned to meditate, and I started doing retreats, and I started doing yoga, and I started doing breath work and reading different books. And, everything started to change in my outer world. And then eventually I left that to now become a teacher and retreat host and author and speaker and coach. So, it's fascinating how much my outer world has changed so much based upon the work that I did on my inner world. And the world has it, in my mind, the other way around. We are trying to control and regulate and influence and determine our outer world so that it can change our inner world. But it has to be the other way around. Otherwise, we'll just keep going back into the same patterns of behavior because we haven't addressed what's going on in our inner world.
That's super powerful, and wow, what a journey! It's incredible. We have had quite a few number of guests here, and just recently, I think of another gentleman too. He started an online gambling poker thing, super successful. Oh man, the money, the car, all of that, and everything. But yeah, it just wasn't it. It just burnt out, man. It's just all that outer thing, and that's why I tell people: be careful what you wish for. You don't know what could happen. But perhaps you could tell me a little bit about, like, was it a phone call that you received, from the universe saying, Tom Cronin, we don't want you there no more, or was it like a gradual number of things happening?
What I'm starting to see myself, but also share with my clients, is that as we get more conscious, we have greater perceptive capacity. We're able to perceive, we're able to see more, become a seer, a seer. And you start to see this remarkable divine intelligence that is always working to support you, to guide you, to help you, to assist you, to improve your life. But obviously, in the early days, when we're so blinkered and blindfolded by our desires, our fears, our traumas, our wounds, and our conditioning and coding, that we can't see that intelligence. So we just keep getting hit and hit and hit by the universe, thinking that, you know, we must be a terrible person because we keep getting hit by the universe. But what the universe is trying to do is to guide us. And so for me, what it was initially guiding me with was anxiety and depression, insomnia, eventually agoraphobia, panic attacks. Like life was just getting darker and more unpleasant, which was the universe hitting me, trying to say, no, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Do it this way, do it something differently. But eventually I got so beaten into submission, into the point of really what was called a breakdown. So the nervous system broke down. It was incapable of handling what I was putting it through. And in that submission, where I was kind of like at my lowest point, I was on mental health leave, couldn't go to work, I was on medication, seeing psychiatrists, psychologists, on suicide watch at the local hospital, had to report in. It was then that the universe sent the next signal. And it was at home, 1996. There was no internet, no Netflix, no distraction with Instagram or TikTok. And there was just TV, free-to-air TV. And I was watching a documentary about a property developer who was very successful. It was actually on 60 Minutes. And I wanted to see this segment because it was all about how successful this guy was. He built all the high-rise buildings in Sydney and Melbourne. And I was into success and money, so I thought this would be a really interesting story. But he, in that story, 20-minute segment, 60 Minutes, he talked for about 2 minutes how he used, at the time it was called transcendental meditation, otherwise known as Vedic meditation as well, how he used transcendental meditation to help him with his stress. And they showed him in a suit, sitting in a chair while he was doing the voiceover, with his eyes closed. He had a tie, and I remember it so clearly. He had a suit. This was nearly 30 years ago. And he was talking about how he does this technique where he has this mantra and he goes into this transcending state, and it really helps him find calmness. And it was like a light bulb moment. So it was at that point the universe sent me the signal. Now, I'd had friends tell me for many years I should meditate, calm my mind down. I was out of control, wasn't able to hear it. It was like blocking my ears out. But at this point, I could hear it. And at this point, I was like, that's exactly what I need. And I went to the yellow pages. So all the young people listening, that's a big fat book we used to have that you all call Google these days. And I opened up to M for meditation, and there it was, transcendental meditation. So I rang them up on the landline. That's a phone that has a cable attached to it, and I started my journey. So yeah, the universe will talk to you, and it will guide you when you're ready to hear.
Yeah, it seems as if we have just been dumped here in this place, and we just have to survive it to the end. But once you start investigating a couple of things, you start to learn that there's something deeper going on behind the scenes if you just pay attention. And it seems like that's what happened to you. No.
Yeah, what we need to navigate this complexity of being here in this three-dimensional field is we need great adaptive capacity. We need incredible adaptive capacity. Even Darwin said the strongest of the species survives, the most adaptable. So adaptive capacity is our key to evolution, to reducing chaos, to reducing stress, to reducing turmoil, to reducing disease. The problem with us humans is we lack a lot of adaptive capacity. We're very rigid and stuck and calcified in the way we operate and the way we function, the way we see the world. And this is predominantly a large code and construct that society's put into our brain, into our software, that is our operating system. And to break free of that shackle is not easy. It's very hard.
Yes, I recently have been through that myself, and got the job that I wanted and the degree and all of this and all sorts of room for growth, but there was just something that I was paying attention to, and then the noise just kept getting louder. It just kept telling me like, "Oh, we don't want you here, we want you over there." And I'm like, yeah, but then I was afraid. I was like, yeah, but what about the money? What about my career? Like, what am I gonna do? I got 2 kids, I got a house, and all of these other things that are depending on me. But it seems like you have found that through stillness. you know So
Yeah,
perhaps you
look,
could tell me something about the stillness. How would
mm,
that work? Like a long term wealth, on the
mm.
mental and emotional and financial aspect.
I think it's important, this is the first time in this era that we're in as humans that what we're seeing is um, people that support other people in transformation. That is meditation teachers, breath workers, healers, coaches, not psychologists, people in this sort of deeper sort of work, um, getting paid for it. Okay, so traditionally that has never been the case. This is the first time we've really seen people looking to make a career out of this and feed their families, house their families, and you know, usually it was people in Buddhist traditions that had people walking around the streets, putting their bowls out and getting people to fill their bowls up with food that they'd worked hard to provide that food, and then they give it to someone that is begging for it through alms, ALMS. And this is the first time we've had to make careers out of this. Initially, I thought that, I would just leave a very successful six-figure career in finance, multi-six-figure career in finance, and then living in Sydney, a very expensive city, one of the most expensive cities in the world as far as housing goes, and everything else, and fund and support a family of four. Just trust alone isn't enough. I've learned that the hard way. Firstly, trust in one area. You will always be supported in some way, shape, or form. It will work out. But what I thought would happen was I would replace my salary in 6 months and I'd be fine. That didn't happen. And that was a really complex and challenging time. A big part of my work these days is to help people navigate that complexity of transitioning out of what is a career that you might not want to feel is the best place and use of your time, to go into a career where you can create more impact and more support in the world and make more, change people's lives more. So helping people make that transition with business models that will support and help underpin that financial obligation that we've got. The second thing is, if just so happens that for a while that shift doesn't support you financially, and there's chances sometimes that will happen, it's okay to work in a day job. We've got to remember that Superman was really good at leaping over tall buildings and stopping locomotives and had X-ray vision. He still needed to work at Daily Planet to pay his rent. So there's nothing wrong with having a day job and doing this on the side as a part-time thing, and not denouncing or renouncing or grumbling about the fact that you have to, be a candlestick maker, a baker, or a blacksmith. That we do sometimes need to just have a day job that might not be a fulfilling mission of saving the planet, but just that it just puts bread on the table, and that's okay to do that as well.
Yeah, you do support them. I did look at the website and I saw that short video, and it was as if, Tom, you were talking to me directly. I was like, yeah, that's me. Like, I'm in this position that he's saying right now. And I saw the model that you had, the triangular thing, and I'm doing quite a number of things already, but there's some things that are missing too. So what I can tell you is that I have been not working at the corporate job I just celebrated my first year. And in the beginning, it was quite difficult as well. And emotionally, it was as if someone had just killed our dog, and then, the bills start coming in, and then there's the mortgage, and, I was like, oh, how are we going to make it? And then we have this lifestyle, but then that other thing is not coming in. So, but there was a number of factors that came in for me that helped me to decide that I'm going forward no matter what, and it's difficult. So perhaps you could tell me, what is it that you tell someone who's in a
Sure.
position like this, hey, it's going to be all right, don't worry, it's going to
Mm.
work out, or these other gurus, they say lots of these things, and I'm like,
Yeah. Look, absolutely. Our world is flooded with, what's the right word to use it, not too disparagingly. I was going to say, scammers or charlatans. It's not necessarily that bad. They think they're doing the right thing, but maybe they don't think that they're doing the right thing. I've been ripped off a few times by people that promised me they would blow up my business and make me hundreds of thousands of dollars in 3 months, and it didn't happen. And then we never heard from them again. So look, there's definitely some people out there we want to be cautious of that, exploiting a lot of people that are wanting to grow their businesses in this space. But there's usually two things that hold people back. Firstly, it's just going to take time. It's going to take time to grow your brand, to grow respect and rapport with the community, to build a community, to build a base of loyal followers. We have to earn our stripes. You can't become general in the army unless you go through all the lower ranks. And it's just going to take time, no matter how good you are, that you will just have to take time to get to general. And it's no different from the acorn eventually going to become the oak tree. There's no question about it. The oak tree is in the acorn, but it is going to take time. Now, firstly, that's the first factor, is time. The second thing is, like the oak tree growing out of the acorn, it needs the right conditions, the right environment. It needs to be watered and nurtured and have the right soil and the right nutrients. So making sure that we've created and built around us the right environment for that growth. You know, we're doing the right things on social. Do we have the right business model? Do we have the right systems? What are we doing for promotion and exposure to the global wider audience? And then the next big one, which is a really big one, and that is products. You know, have we got products that people want or need? And are those products that people are willing to buy? Make a financial transaction for an exchange of value? Do they feel that those products, those offers, are going to enhance and support their life in some way, shape, or form? You know, they're doing it with their Aperol Spritz, with their Netflix subscription, with their bowls of ice cream. Maybe they would do it with what you're offering, but maybe the message to market's wrong, or maybe the offer's not quite right, or maybe we don't have built the product yet. What I tend to find with a lot of people that I work with, particularly yoga teachers, breath workers, and meditation teachers, you know, we need to have 1 or 2 or 3 offers that are at least $4,000 to $5,000 to $10,000. Now, it took me a long time to work on having the confidence, the courage, the capacity, the capability to provide something to the community. But in the last 2 days, I just received yesterday a $10,000 speaking gig, and today I'm quoting on a $7,500 speaking gig. So, you know, having high ticket priced items is where you're going to get the real scale with your business. And then the final thing, because it's a very holistic approach, and this is the stuff, the space that I work with people, helping them get into the world to really create more work for not work for themselves, but to create more offers and more opportunity for people to be able to work with them. But the hardest thing for most of us that we struggle with is overcoming the guilt and the shame of asking for money for what we do. You know, it's so deep in our psyche to feel shame or bad, and I struggle with it as well. But the thing that I help people overcome, which I've had to work on as well, is that if they're willing to value a $200 to $300 exchange for bags of cocaine, for a $4,000 holiday to Bali to get drunk at Finn's on the beach in Canggu, or to go to Cancun, or to, you know, I talked to one lawyer who was reluctant to sign up to my meditation course, even though she really wanted to, because it's, you know, it's like $900. It's so much money. And I said, well, tell me about your last holiday. What did you do? She goes, oh, I went to Paris. I said, okay, when did you go? She went 9 months ago. I said, how long were you there? She said, 3 weeks. I said, how much did you spend? She said, $9,000. I said, if you have a stressful day today, that $9,000 expenditure, how is it going to enhance or improve your overall well-being today, other than you going back and looking at a few photos in your phone and reminiscing about that experience? It's not going to have a substantial impact on increasing your productivity, your performance, reducing your sickness, your disease, enhancing your relationships. So a $900 investment where I'm going to be with you every week, supporting you on your journey, teaching you how to meditate and how to integrate that into life on a daily basis, may well be a better investment than the $9,000. So it's about helping people reframe their understanding about where they're allocating their time, their attention, and more importantly, their money. And that's a big shift that we need to make.
Yeah, money is just, it's one of those things. It's incredible. But before we move in that area, you mentioned something earlier about your environment and how it needs to be a certain way. Perhaps you could tell me, how is it, or how was it like in the early days? You know, you went from doing these other things to now doing these things. You know, how's that work?
You know, firstly, that environment we talked about was having the right people around me. You know, I've always had coaches, advisors, consultants. And I think anyone who's looking to create impact in the world, run a successful business, should really have people around you that are going to help you see things, bounce ideas off, to ask questions. We had a group coaching forum this morning with my conscious leaders in the Zen Academy. It was like 3 hours ago. And, they were asking me questions time and time again. What do you think I should do about this retreat? What do you think I should do about this? And what do you think of my website? And so having like an advisory board around you and a support system is really, really critical, I think. So that was the first thing that I really set out to do, was to know that I can't do this alone. I really am qualified in one area, but there's a lot of areas that I need some support and help with. So having a team that offloads a lot of my work, so a support team, but also having an advisory team as well.
And how about your daily routines, right? Because I'm sure they were different before, but these rituals, right? Because I have mine too, and they help me. Because without them, it's crazy. But tell me about yourself.
Yeah, that's a really good question. The embodiment piece is so important. We can run successful businesses, but if we're burning out, if we're not living and breathing it, if we're not really representing what it is we're teaching, and I'll give you an example. We'll get into my morning routine, my evening routine in a moment, but I got booked speeding the other day, and it was pretty hefty fine. And it was the universe. We talked about the universe guiding us. And at that point in time, I was running late for a meeting and I was trying to get there quickly. I knew I was going too fast. But what I dived deeper into was the energy behind that. It was an energy of fear. Okay, I'm fearful that it's not going to work out. I'm fearful that I'm going to run late. I'm fearful that they're going to be upset that I'm late. And fear is the energy behind rushing, behind haste, behind hurrying. And if I'm supposed to be teaching people how to be embodiments of love and fearlessness, and yet I'm operating from fear, the universe is going to hit me really hard. And that's what it did. And so firstly, the embodiment piece is such an important part of it. We have to live, breathe, and have the vibrational resonance of what it is that the space that we're working in, which is why a lot of this stuff's coming out in the world at the moment in the media about all the things that are going on in the world, because of lack of full embodiment. And to be embodied, we have to have our practices. So for me, that's so important. I go to the gym 3-4 times a week, so I like to be really grounded in the physical sustainability of my physical mass. So muscle mass and bone density and cardio are really important. Stretching is another component. So I stretch every morning and every evening, even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes. I'd like to go to yoga classes more, but the barest minimum is stretching every morning and every evening. Breath work, obviously oxygenating the body with consistent breath work practices. It doesn't take much. It's not that complex. Obviously my diet, my hydration, my mindset, visualizations, journaling. These are all core components to my daily routine. And the way I see it is that they become the foundation that the house is built on, like the slab. We don't want to build a house without a strong foundation. And so my morning routine is really critical for that.
Yeah, same here. Like I'm right on point with, excuse me, most of those things. I do quite a bit of running, but yoga and the breath work, I try to make that non-negotiable. And stretching as well and things of that nature. And some people think, hey, well, I can't afford to go to the gym, or it's taking up too much time. You could do things at home. You don't have to go to the gym. You could bring some weights and go to YouTube and you can find a guy who's teaching you for free, or something like that. But that like you said, the basis, I have to have that. That's why I'm up very early, 4:00 in the morning. That's it. Hit the ground. I start with water and with a little bit of sea salt and lemon to alkaline my body. I get the green tea going, shower, and then it's off to the races, yoga, breath, or run. I put my sneakers on, I'm out. I run about 6.5 to 7 miles a day. Not to be braggadocious, because it's not like that. It's just, I'm saying that this is my lifestyle. This is what helps me. And if I could do it, lots of people could do it.
What's your bedtime routine? I'd love to hear more about that. What do you do?
Well, I usually stretch, and then there's breath work often as well. That makes me sleep like I don't fall asleep. I drift off to sleep nicely,
And what breath work would that? So would it be like a Wim Hof
Wim
style?
Hof style like that? Yeah, power breaths. Or sometimes I do box breathing as well. That really helps to like calm me. Like I'm doing box breathing for a while, and then before you know it, I wake up in the morning. It's like, I just drifted off to sleep while I was counting.
Why don't you just share with the audience what box breathing is, just in
Certainly,
case
I
they don't
envision
know?
a box in my mind's eye, and then on the bottom, I breathe in to the count of five to the end. And then going up, I hold my breath, counting to five. And then on the top, I go five across, letting the air out. And then coming down the other side of the box is where I'm holding that breath too. So,
Mm. I love the visual component. I know of box breathing, but I like that you've added the visual component of the
for sure.
lines going
Yeah.
up and down and
Yeah.
around. Yeah,
Visualization is
that'd be
everything. That's what you said. You visualize
very
too. And
relaxing.
then journaling, that's a big one
Mhm.
for me also. And then what works for me, and one of the things that we preach here at the Omziel Healing Sanctuary, because that's who we are here, is tracking. That's a big one for us. We tell people we do men's retreats. We have one coming up now, February 20 to the 22nd. Take men away, unplug them from the matrix, bring them to nature. We go hiking and cold water mountain plunging, and there's workshops and things of that nature. But one of the strong foundations is tracking. You have to track everything that's going on. I mean, most things, if you're trying to lose weight, you have to get on the scale first of all, and then you have to write down what the weight is, because if you don't, how would you know you're losing weight? You could be like, oh, my pants are loose, but that could be gas, it could be anything. You need to track.
And how often would they be doing the tracking? Is it a daily tracking
Depends
or?
what it is. So when I run, I track my
Mm.
running. I have a yearly calendar right there, all different colors. That's an important thing too, because psychologists know that if everything's in just one color is black, it just fades to the background. So there's different colors for things. I have, the distance, the time I was running, the calories I burned, and how long did it take me, and things like that. But then I also have another one where I track. I went to the movies with my kids and I ate the whole box of popcorn, like with butter. It's not even real butter, it's chemicals. Yeah. But if I don't track that, you understand, Tom? I won't know. I'll be doing that every
Mm.
weekend with
Mm.
them. See? So,
I love it. I love the methodology, and it's so true. There's a saying, "Yad bhavam tad bhavati." What do we think we
mm,
become? And so, where our attention goes, it grows. And the fact that you're putting attention on this and being specific about it and intentional
mhm,
about it, really
yeah.
powerful. And where do you run your men's retreat? It sounds
It's in
interesting.
New Paltz, New York, which is about an hour and a half.
Oh, in New York.
It's upstate New York, and the stewards of the land, they're in charge of over 250 acres of land. So the gentleman who purchased the land like more than 30 years ago, Dr. Stephen Larson, he worked under Joseph Campbell, and he helped him to write some of those books that Joseph wrote. If you know Joseph Campbell,
Mhm.
maybe depending on the crowd, he was a scholar and a philosopher and many things. And his big thing was the hero's journey. We all go through it. We
Mhm.
all have to go into the dark cave and slay the dragon. And the bigger the dragon, the bigger pot of gold that he's trying to hide from you, things like that.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So perhaps you could tell me, how about those relationships of yours in those early days when you were making that transition? I mean, was your wife staying by you all this time? I mean, I'm sure there were so-called friends that were like, hey, Tom has just gone off the deep end. We're not hanging out with him no more.
Yeah, this is the fascinating thing that it doesn't get talked a lot about when we go through these shifts. And I see this after my retreats as well, and after people go through transformations with me in my work, is that there needs to be a lot of advisory and support and guidance around the integration of that, because the complexity is that as you change, and you're going to change the way you think, you're going to change your daily habits, you're going to change your vibrational resonance, the frequency that you're in, and that's going to cause misalignment with your current existing community. Because if you're doing lots of change and they're not doing lots of change, then now you're creating fracturing in the relationship, you're creating discord. There's no longer an accordance, there's no longer a resonance together. Let's all hang out and get wasted. Let's go out till 3 in the morning and sleep in till midday. Oh no, I want to go to bed at 9 o'clock and I want to wake up at 4 o'clock and I want to do my routine. Oh well, how are we going to manage this relationship? So it gets complex. So my wife has been with me for all through the process from the very early days, from when I was 20. I was 22 and she was 20 when we first met, 35 years together. So she's seen the full spectrum. And look, we don't sugarcoat things. It's always complex. All relationships these are constantly changing individual organisms and ecosystems and biologies and energy systems that are constantly changing, and finding unity in this constantly changing field is complex and not easy. The simplicity is the divine. The complexity is a 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional, 5-dimensional world that's fluctuating and moving. And so, I've had a very supportive partner, and we've got a beautiful family, 2 children who are 24 now, twins. But my friendships, as far as my mateships, they've changed a lot, but interestingly, over that time, 2 of my closest friends are still hanging out, and we still go out to raves and listen to music and all the stuff that we were doing back in our 20s. But I just do it personally myself on a different level. I do it without the need to, I guess, take those things to get out of it, because I'm kind of already pretty high when I arrive at the scene. But I love music still, and I love hanging out. I love being with community. But definitely some of my daily habits have changed. My lifestyle habits have changed. Some of the community that I'm in, what we tend to find is some people will be flung out of your orbit. Think of it like the sun. You're a sun with an orbit, a planetary system in orbit around you. And what I see it as is that the sun, the reason the planets are gravitating around the sun is because of gravity, the energetic pull. And so you'll have people that are gravitating into your orbit because there's an attraction to be around you. And the more powerful your gravitational pull, the more planets come into your alignment. So obviously bigger following, more people wanting to listen to what you're doing, more people come into your retreats. But at the same time, some people will be flung out. They don't want to be in that orbit. It's like, ugh, I don't want to be around the whole woo-woo thing. That's boring. That's I don't like that. So definitely some go out and some people come in. And so just trusting that process and not needing to control it or influence it, but just witnessing it and acknowledging it for what it is.
Yeah, I do have some people that I know of back in those early days for myself as well, but we don't have anything else in common anymore. So it's not we don't want to be friends or don't want to talk often. It's just I'm not out in the bar. I'm not, doing things behind my wife's back to be talking about them at the poker game. I'm not doing that. So we just don't have anything in common. I have a different lifestyle, and like you said, other people come through, and they support that, and then they want to see how you're doing, and you get to do these great things, But I think about the
Absolutely.
ambition too. I would imagine that, those early days for yourself too, to continue to maintain that ambition, that fire burning. It must have been, a little tough especially when you don't see the same return as you did, that it came earlier doing other things. So how was it for you, and how do you teach people to continue to be ambitious, without going back to that cycle of being burnt out?
Yeah, it's a really good question. When I was in finance as a broker, there needs to be very high drive and high ambition to be successful. So your driving and your engine for drive is your ego. Okay, it needs to succeed, it needs to thrive, it needs to have purpose, it needs to have revenue, it needs to make success, and its measuring rod for its identity is its success and its wealth. And I was very good at that, and that's what was driving me. And I carried that egoic drive into my career as a teacher when I first left finance to do what I'm doing. And the problem with that is that what I learned the hard way. Now with hindsight and greater consciousness, I can look back and see where I went wrong a lot of the time, was that I was driving my engine for my success was all wrong, and it was out of kilter, because that driving force can't be the same driving force in this field here. And it took a long time, and it was basically the universe beating me into submission again. It just keeps doing it. And then I learned that it has to come from selflessness, and it has to come not from ambition. It has to come from surrender and service. And so the big work that I do with my leaders that I work with is how much can we get out of the way? How much can we give ourselves to source or God or the divine, whatever you want to call it, and say, I will be your representative. I will be your flag bearer, and you put me where you need me most. I will impact as many people as you want me to impact. I will just get out of the way for that to happen. And then it was quite phenomenal. Then, because of that level of integrity and authenticity, and I'm still a work in progress, so don't get me wrong, I've got stuff to do on my own personal self. But what I did notice was happening was bigger opportunities were coming. Last year I worked with some of the biggest companies in the world. I spoke on the biggest stages, 5,000 people, had bigger speaking gigs. And there seemed to be an alignment and a congruency between the less of me and the less drive I had, the less ambition and the more surrender, the better my business was becoming and the more success I was having.
Wow, that's beautiful. Surrender. That's one of the things, because it's about trust, right? That's what this whole little game or this whole system is telling you. Trust. Just trust. And it's a bit scary because of the systems that you talk about. We go to a job and we know at the 2 weeks we're going to get the paycheck, and some kind of carrot we're going to be smelling or
normally action is the trust is the hard thing, because what we're doing is we're going to do an action in the hope that and not even the hope, just trusting that the outcome and the process will support everything. But in the early days, without that, we lock in everything. Okay, I need to, before I do action, before I take this job, I need to know what the salary are, the terms are. Before I go into this relationship, I need to know what the terms are. So we always want to know safety first and then action. Whereas in this step, it's like action first and trust that the results will happen afterwards. It's a totally other way of doing it.
And it's beautiful, I mean, in my eyes, because there's a risk in everything. Even going to the job that you think that is so secure, when you could go in and they go, hey, we don't like the way your hair is combed today and we don't need you anymore, in so many words, but here you are building this business too. It's sometimes I'm hot and heavy also. And then other times I'm like, where did these people go? Like, where are they? I was doing so great,
Yeah, it's interesting how it tests you sometimes when it just becomes crickets. It's just, I don't know if you have it in America, there's a saying, if it's crickets, I mean, there's no inquiry. It's just quiet. It's just crickets.
Wow.
Everything just dries up, and then you just have to sit through those dry spells and trust.
But I see that you have this system that you've put together somehow to help people build this thing, because I mean, there's lots of systems out there, and we always say, when you meet the guy who says, I have the shoe that fits every foot, stay away from that guy, because not every shoe fits, so perhaps you could tell me a little bit about the shoes that you're making.
I paid close to hundreds of thousands of dollars for advisors, consultants, mentors to coach me when I was leaving finance to build my business. And this was back in the sort of Russell Brunson era, and the big funnel bro guys, and Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. And it was the early days of creating this one thing, and it was going to blow up and you're going to make millions out of it. And everyone was saying the same thing, which was niche down, do one thing, do it well. And that's what I did for a while. And that's where I got my butt kicked and it didn't work out. And so I went back to the drawing board and realized that I had to get true and authentic about doing what I love. So I always ask my coaching clients 4 questions. Are you trained, skilled, or qualified in some area? So breathwork, meditation, yoga, retreats, whatever. It could be law, it could be being a doctor. The second question is, do you love doing that? Okay, do you love doing that? So getting clear on what it is that you love doing. So you might be qualified as a lawyer, but not love doing that. So if that's a no on the second box, then we have to start thinking about something else. So if it's a yes, I'm trained and skilled in, let's just say for me, teaching meditation. Do I love doing it? Yes, absolutely. Do you solve a problem in the world, in people's lives, with that service, with that action? Yes, I do. I solve lots of people's problems: insomnia, depression, anxiety, ADHD, all sorts of things. For companies, it's burnout, it's loss of productivity, loss of concentration, loss of focus. So I solve a problem. The fourth question is, would people be willing to make a financial exchange of value for you to go in and solve that problem with the thing that you love doing, that you're trained and skilled in? And if you got a yes for that one, and you got 4 yeses, and that means you've got a business. So then we look at, okay, what can we take this first box, what you're skilled and trained in, and what can we bring to the community that provides a buffet of options? Not only giving the community options to work with you, because a lot of clients, there was one lady I was working with, she just had one option, and that was a $12,000 coaching program. I said, you've got a big following here, and there's only going to be 0.01% of your followers will be able to afford to work with you, which means that you've got 99.9% of your followers wanting to work with you, but they can't afford to work with you. So you're ignoring most of your community in being able to provide them with something. So I look at giving your community a diverse array of options to firstly work with you at different levels in different ways, but also thinking about your customer journey. Think about, if someone's working with you here, then maybe over time they might want to work with you here. And if they're working with you here, then they might want to go back and work with you here. So looking at your customer journey, your customer pipeline, and thinking about what other options can you provide for your community in this space of personal development, spiritual growth, and transformation. And so really map out what that customer journey looks like for my clients, whether you're a yoga teacher, a PT, a nutritionist, a breath worker. It works for everyone in this phase. I call it the Ascension Business Blueprint, where people ascend up through your business pipeline.
Okay. I love the way all that sounds. Lots of different things that I've heard before, but I see that you seem to maintain that stillness and that guiding light right there, because your character, it seems that way. I don't know. It's the first time I'm meeting you, but I see some of the other things that you're doing too, and you seem to be right on point there. So, when people first come to you, what is it that you tell them? Like when they come to you, do they normally say like, "Hey, you're gonna fix this, right, buddy?" I mean, or they're like, "Help me," What is it that you tell them first?
I normally I don't tell them, I ask. What are you struggling with? What are your pain points? What do you need? I had an inquiry this morning from a large organization that needs someone to speak at their event. Yesterday I had someone asking about their daughter who is really struggling with their mental health, and can I help them? So, so I ask questions, whether it's a large organization or whether it's a mum. What are you currently doing to solve this problem? What is the problem? How big is the problem? How much is that problem affecting you, your family, or your business, or your organization? Tell me more about what you've done so far that has or hasn't worked. I just want to gather information. And then I don't come with the idea that I have all the answers. I come with the inquiry to see if I can formulate potentially a strategy. And it may not be that I can do anything. And it may be that I've got someone in my mind, that it might be that, maybe you're the guy that I need to send them to. So it's less about me, how do I, exploit this situation. It's more, how do we solve the problem collectively as a species?
That's beautiful. Wow. And I would imagine that you do that with yourself as well. And does it look like that when you're looking at Tom and you're like, oh, wait, do you start to go like, do you get it out and write it down and say, hey, what's the problem here?
Yeah, most of the time I'm just scratching my head. I have no idea. Oh, jeez. I don't know. It's just a mess.
Right. But somehow it works out in the end, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's, self-inquiry is such a big part of our journey as humans. Unfortunately, outward inquiry is where most people are at right now, looking at our Instagram and our likes and our comments and our bank balance and our Bitcoin and our sports team and, our Tinder profiles. And, most of it's outward inquiry in the world at the moment still, but inward inquiry, it's a tough gig. You have to really look at your shadows, look at your dark side, look at your patterns, look at your programs. And, and it's an ongoing thing. So it's easy to ignore that because there's so much charm in the outside world now. And so putting time aside, meditation, contemplation, I call it critical thinking. And meditation is a big part of my day where I clear the mind, I create space. and I want to go into transcendence, into the field of infinite, into the field of the eternal, into the field of, we call it the absolute, which is the field of all things but no things, because it's just the field of non-form, the unmanifest. But from that, coming out of that in my meditation, then I want to use my mind. It's called pragyaparad, looking at where's their mistaken intellect, where is there glitches in my code, where is this fault in my software, why am I thinking that way, why do I keep thinking that way, why do I have those ambitions, why do I have those desires, why do I have those self-doubts or those negative thoughts. So yeah, it's an ongoing process.
The meditation, that's a big one for me. And I usually tell people too, like meditation has been recorded like probably over 5,000 years. Anything that's lasted that long, we should be paying attention to it, right? So how about yourself? How does the yoga work for you? You get up in the morning and then you sit. How long? What is it that you receive from it too?
Yeah, I generally do Vedic meditation, which is mantra-based. So we use specific mantras that the student receives in an initiation with a teacher. I've been using that practice for 30 years now every day. So it's usually bare minimum 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the afternoon or evening. Sometimes I go a lot longer, 1 or 2 or 3 hours. But ideally, it's just for accessibility's sake, 20 minutes is sufficient. And then that's just a time to sort of really clear the mind, get into transcendence or deep quietness. And then I like to do before that, I like to do my stretching, my yoga. Like I said, ideally, I'd like to go to more yoga classes, but I just haven't been, I'll be doing more of them just at home at the moment. And then doing some gym as well. But the meditation is usually just 20 minutes in a chair seated with my mantra.
Yeah, and then the yoga is a form of meditation too. It's like the breath, you have to pay attention. That's another one that I tell other guys. It's like we have these men's retreat and we do yoga, and some of these guys, they've never done yoga. They've heard about it, but they would never do it. And some of these guys come in like brolic like that. Come on, man, yeah. And then they're like, they can't hold a pose. They're trembling and like they're just not strong in certain areas. But every time they come out of it, they were like, wow, I never did that before. It was beautiful. I love it. It's like, yeah, you gotta keep it up, man. Keep it up, especially the meditation.
Yeah, yoga's so important. Yeah, yoga and meditation together, they're such a great combination. We use a particular sequence in our retreats, which integrates some yoga asana, some pranayama, alternate breathing between the nostril, and then 20 minutes of the meditation. It's a really great combination.
For me, Tom, I get these downloads because this is a new buzzword too, right? I get these downloads, but really they're just messages, right? Because I usually tell people when you want to speak to God or the universe or whatever your higher power, you pray. And then when you want to hear, then you stay silent. It's in the silence, the messages come. And I do get these messages. Like I would have never normally gotten them. They come like not tons of them. Like I'll just be silent with the breath, nothing. All of a sudden, pow! I'm like, well, of course, yes. Then I come out of meditation. I'm like writing it down. I'm like, yeah, why didn't I wouldn't have never thought of it. How about yourself? Does it work sort of like that?
Yeah, absolutely. The way I see it is this, that we have thoughts in our mind. These are called vasanas, tendencies of the mind. And our mind only has so many thoughts every day, and they're very habituated. We have a very repetitive thought process in our mind. People don't realize how repetitive our thoughts are on a daily basis. But what we also have access to with our mind is the ability to open into the field of mind. So outside of my mind is it's like the phone. The phone has information in the phone, which is the calendar and the calculator and the camera. This is your operating system. So that's what's inside our brain, is the operating system inside your phone. But the phone's brilliant skill set is its ability to access the information that the phone is in. The phone's in the information field. And so I'm in the information field of all potential and all creativity. And so the downloads is my mind's opening up into what is in the field that I'm looking to pull and cognize out of the field. And so meditation, I think, is a really critical methodology or technique to give us more access to the intelligence in the field than the intelligence that's in the brain.
Yeah, that's fascinating, especially now with all this research that is being done with the brain and different parts, and then
Mm,
the field, the unified field, and this these
mhm,
theories or ideas that there's these multiverses going on, and there's these other worlds that are like right here. We just can't see them because we have the veil on our but when we get into these states, like it's almost as if they're communicating with us, not to sound too woo woo, but it's almost as if it wants to tell us. It's almost like,
mm,
hey, let me help you out, but you got to be still. I'll
mm.
tell you, but just wait.
Yeah, Joe Dispenza's doing some great work on this, accessing the field and then pulling from the field, manifesting from that field. And so this is something, as you say, more science is getting behind that. I think it's the next frontier for humanity is to really start to understand the potential that we have.
For sure. I know Dr. Joe Dispenza, he's on our list. I have this folder where I share with people PDF books and audiobooks. Sometimes people
Mhm,
just like,
mhm,
I want to share with them, like, hey, I got this great thing. And they sign up to the email list and I share the folder with them. But Dr. Joe Dispenza is there for sure, breaking the habit of being yourself, right? Right.
mm,
But yeah, I could listen to those books over and over again. It's just so powerful.
mhm,
How about yourself? What books would you recommend? Because books is a big thing here. We push people, you gotta
mm,
read. Books are like windows. You open it, you get to look
mm,
outside and be like, wow, I could go there,
mm,
yeah. Or like we like to say,
mm.
the wheel. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a book on it that even shows you how to use the wheel. You
Yeah, I mean, depends who's asking. So if it's spiritual books, I think books like Emmanuel's. I did a post on my Instagram the other day listing 7 books that changed my life. So if anyone wants to go and find that, it's not far back in the Instagram. But the one that was number 1 was Emmanuel's book, which was a channeled book by an ascended being. Really beautiful, powerful book on what it is to be human and how to thrive as a human. Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth was a great one. His Power of Now is also another big favorite of mine. And then I really like the Conversations with God series by Neil Donald Walsh. And then with business books, I think Success Principles by Jack Canfield was a really, really big one. The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks was also really big for me. Yeah, there's some really great, so many books out there now on business and mindset. Atomic Habits was a big one. Yeah, some really awesome books out there. I could list so many
yeah,
of them.
yeah.
I'm the same as you. Just I
Yep,
devour
love
books.
it, love it. Many of those books I've read. Atomic Habits, that was a big one for me. I was like, wow, this
Mm,
book is really good, and it's one of the things that we help
mm.
to incorporate in our men's gatherings, men's training. It's like you need.
There's one that's just come out recently that's worth checking out. I only came across it just the other day, and it's called "It's Easier to 10x than 2x,"
Mm.
and it's all about. It really gets you to stretch. If you think you want to grow your business by 2x by the end of next year, then the question is, what does it look like if you were to 10x that? And what if you were to condense that from 2 years down to 1 year?
Mm.
And so it gets to such absurd levels that it really plays with your mind a bit. It's really quite
Mm.
fascinating to get
Mm.
challenged to not only see what a 10xing of your life would look like, but also in a timeline that's almost impossible for that
Mm.
to do. But then surprisingly, a lot of people
Wow,
do it.
that's beautiful. Yeah, we have to think out the box and know that there is no box. There is no box.
Mm,
We have to
mm,
get out of that. It's
yeah,
like the 1 minute mile running, those type of things. People think the thing is,
sure. Yeah.
it's just like the universe that we're living in now. Is it the flat earth or round earth? I think, Tom, that it's something way beyond that we just cannot comprehend. Is the sun far away or is it close? Or the moon is real or it's just a satellite? I mean, like it's just something else. Something else. Like, yeah,
Mhm,
yeah. So we're coming up
mm.
on the hour now. Perhaps you can tell us where people can find you, including that Instagram handle.
Yeah, find me on Instagram. It's where I like to communicate with people. I respond to all my messages. So if anyone reaches out, love to hear from you. It's Tom Cronin, TomCronin, and just all one word, Tom Cronin on my Instagram. And then my website's the same, tomcronin.com. So love to hear from people. And yeah, hopefully we be part of this journey together as we walk this way to
That's
awakening.
it. Just like I had someone tell me, we're just holding each other's hand, walking each other home. Like it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, that's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
That's right. That's all. We just have to remember, because that's what they say. A lot of this
Yeah.
is just remembering, especially like with this
Mhm.
technology. There's another one. They go, "Oh, did you see the new?" Well, actually, it's not really new. If you know history of what's been going on in this planet, has been going on for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. I mean, diamond cutting technology. Come on, something was going on here, man. You know, pay
Mhm.
attention. Yeah.
Mhm.
But thank you.
I hear you. I hear
Thank
you.
you for your time. I appreciate you big time. Stay right there so we can talk offline, brother. For those tapping in, thank you again for listening. And